All right, everyone, now it's time to weigh in as a Vermonter, as one of Bernie Sanders' constituents when he decides to go on the news the other day, link in the description archived, of course, and pitch a 4-day work week. I'm covering this partially because I like doing my Bernie Sanders impression. I do that one well, much better than some of my other impressions. Bernie Sanders is pitching a 32-hour work week. And one part of me is like, okay, I mean, if people can work less and they have more leisure time, that's a good thing, as long as as long as the purchasing power remains in parity, then that's not a problem. I mean, we've got AI now, we've got the rise in robotics, we've got all sorts of things that can make the economy more efficient. And so, yeah, it's not necessarily for people to work 40, 45 hours a week. That's admittedly so. Here's the problem, though. You're going to make people bored. What you should be doing is pushing for a more meritocratic and capitalistic society, and this is the opposite of what Bernie Sanders is doing, in which people have forms of employ that they generally tolerate and or enjoy, as opposed to having to doing back-breaking labor, flipping the burgers, or something that they don't want to do. There are some SpongeBobs out in the world that genuinely enjoy flipping burgers. That's not the average person. Nobody who's 60 years old should have to be in a form of employ where they're doing that sort of thing. It's like the age in which Bernie Sanders grew up in, so back in the 50s and 60s. Back then, with a part-time summer job, you could put yourself through college. It's not hyperbole. This has been fact-checked even by the most neoliberal fact-checkers. It's actually true. A part-time summer job would pay your tuition at Harvard. And so if you were skilled, if you worked hard and stuff, if you kept your nose down and you did your work, you could get your education, you wouldn't be in debt, you get a good job, you have a springboard to better jobs, because now you have a degree, and back then it actually meant something. These days, half of them are in women's studies or something like that, so those aren't as meaningful. You focused on STEM, maybe you went into the trades, and you could make a living. And so you would, for long, you wouldn't have to work 40 hours a week for very long, because eventually you'd retire, because you could have your home mortgage-free, you have your 2 cars, your 2-car garage, your quarter-acre, and your picket fence, and all of the American dream sort of hubbub of the 1950s and 60s, the Leave It to Beaver generation. I dream of Jeannie and Gilligan's Island and all of these fun boomer things. But you can't do that anymore. There's no fundamental reason why we can't have that sort of economy. It should be possible for people to have at least lateral mobility so they can say, well, I'm going to be in the working class. I'm not going to make a huge amount of money, but I'll make ends meet. But I've got my choice of different jobs within that echelon. Arguably, upward mobility. Hey, I've worked hard. I'm 17 years old and I worked at the malt shop. And then some dude who sells cars came in and he noticed my work ethic and said, hey, kid, you want a job? I can pay you double what you're making here. That was sort of the way that it worked. And by the way, the boomers still have this odd tendency of thinking that's still the way that things work. You haven't shopped around for a job since the Reagan administration, but you think that if you just pound the pavement that you're going to be able to secure 6 figures with a handshake. Maybe when you were kids. I hate to say, and I don't mean to put down on anyone who's a boomer in the audience, and I know that there are some of you, but there are some boomers that still have that mentality. They think that Carter's president or something like that, and it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? JFK has been dead for a while, just to be clear. Bernie Sanders' pitch is retarded. You do not need a 4-day work week. What you need is a more meritocratic, capitalistic system in which people are more capable of upward mobility and lateral mobility and choosing their poison, so to speak. Otherwise, they're going to get bored. Give the average person a 32-hour work week. What are they going to do with that extra day? Are they going to study? Are they going to self-improve, build a skill or something like that? Engage in some productive hobby? Or are they going to sit on their ass? A lot of them will sit on their ass. That's the whole problem. You're effectively going to create more of a wealth gap, by the way, because the people in society that are more ambitious are going to tend to roar ahead at an accelerated pace. Not necessarily the worst thing in the world. Whereas people who are less ambitious will say, well, I only have to work 32 hours now to make the same money that I was working 40 hours for before. Well, you'll get definitely a split in society, that's for sure. Like, for example, I work more than 40 hours a week. Between my video making, my editing, my writing, the news crawls, and all of the other stuff I have to do, I probably work a 50-hour week. And I'm happy with that. I work 7 days a week and I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm never going to retire from this goddamn job. Why the hell? I'm an opinionated jackass. Why the hell would I want to stop talking about my opinions on video to people? Tens of thousands of people every single day. Most people are not so lucky though. They've got shitty jobs. They've got jobs that they don't want to do. What we should be doing, if the government's going to be involved in all, it should be in work placement. There should be some sort of subsidy for that, like, okay, well, this person is interested in X, Y, and Z. Well, this is sort of the kind of jobs that might line up with them, and we're going to try to facilitate them if they're intelligent in a meritocratic system. If they're intelligent and they're ambitious and they're a hard worker, they're a good worker, then we try to get them job placement or something like that. By the way, that would really help with the homeless crisis as well. But Bernie Sanders is simply saying, oh, everyone should be more lazy. Well, Bernie, I mean, you don't work at all. You haven't in 50 years or thereabouts. You certainly don't work representing the people of the state of Vermont. You don't represent our real interests. You represent socialism in the most literal sense. This is an effort to try to weaken the United States of America, actually, at the end. He's trying to maintain relevance too, and he's become more vociferous as well. You may have noticed this. In the wake of the hiring of the Geek Squad, formerly the Gang of Four, you know, AOC, Tlaib, and Elon Omar, and all these others, hasn't Bernie become more vocal about his beliefs than ever before? And God, the dude's like, what, 80 years old or something like that. He had a heart attack a few years ago. He refuses to slow down. His campaign to try to make Karl Marx the next president of the United States knows no bounds. He refuses to die until that happens. It's sort of like Jimmy Carter. He's on death's doorstep right now. I'm convinced that until the guinea worms are eradicated, he's not going anywhere. Bernie Sanders ain't going anywhere until Karl Marx is the president of the United States. The dude's a dimwit. He has no clue what he's talking about economically, but that's probably because in his entire life, he's only held a couple of jobs. He got fired for one for being lazy, and then the other one was he was a teacher or a professor or something for a couple of years. Other than that, he's only been a politician. He doesn't understand how money and work operate at all. His form of work is, oh, I have to campaign sporadically in order to get reelected. Now, this is the state of Vermont, Bernie. You're an incumbent. You're going to get reelected whether you campaign or not simply because you have name recognition. That's about all. Peace out.